Welcome to part 2 of the chapter 5. So far we talked about the GDP and the expenditure approach, and now we are going to explain what net domestic product is. So GDP is what we have produced goods and services within the country in a given period of time. So the net domestic product is we have to take monies out, set aside monies aside for depreciation. So if we consumed everything we produced, then we will not be able to produce the same number of goods and services a couple of years from now, because our factories would be run down, our machinery would not be replaced. So we need to set aside some money for replacement of our equipment and the factories and the machinery that is being used. So that amount is known as depreciation. So we have to set that aside, otherwise we will not be able to produce the same number of goods and services down the road. So that is why, so the net domestic product, out of the GDP, we set aside depreciation so that we can produce the same number of goods and services next year or the year after or 5 years from now. So investment is very important. So expenditure spent on new plant, equipment, all the changes in business inventories is important, because the stock of capital will not grow unless our investment is greater than the depreciation. If we are just setting aside just enough for the depreciation, we can keep producing only what we can produce now, not more. So our gross investment has to be greater than the depreciation. It makes sense, right? Because if you have just set aside money just to replace the existing machinery, you cannot buy any more new equipment. So your gross investment has to be greater than the depreciation for you to grow and produce more goods and services. So the distinction between GDP and NDP is the depreciation, is the difference between gross investment and net investment. Net investment is gross minus the depreciation. That is what we have put over and above, invested over and above what we have to set aside monies for the current depreciation. So that's our net investment. Gross investment is what we have set aside total in a given time period. So the uses of our output, so who participates in the economy? Obviously households, consumption, which is 70% of the expenditures are by us, consumers, and business firms spend about 17 to 19% on investment, replacing plant, machinery, equipment, and so on, and inventories. And government spending is obviously government buying tangible goods and services, not transfer payments. And international participants also participate in the market. So the value of GDP based on the expenditure approach, we can simply add what did consumers spend. Okay, this is the expenditure. How much did we spend as consumers? How much did the investment sector spend, and how much does the government sector spend, plus how much have we exported out to other countries. And obviously we have to deduct what we imported from other countries, because that's not our GDP. And so we have to take that out. So that is how we calculate GDP based on the expenditure approach. It is consumption plus investment plus government expenditure on real goods and services plus exports minus imports. Okay. Consumption again includes all housing purchases that we have made in the market, product market, and is over 2/3. And with the current economy and recession, consumers are not spending, and hence the GDP is not growing. It has picked up since December, but we are hoping that it will pick up. Consumer spending has been down due to unemployment and lack of jobs, and the economy not doing so well. So once that picks up, the market's economy will get better. So that's our consumption basically. And investment goods are plant and machinery. Any inventory changes, that's investment in that's also investment. So it's about 1/6 of our annual output. Government spending, the government spends on actual goods and services, and it's about 1/5 of our total output, and that does not include income transfers. So income transfer is if I take money in taxes, the government takes money in taxes and gives it to the poor, to the welfare. Oh, that's just money transferring, no goods are exchanged, so that is not included. Net exports, again, our exports are going out to other goods, so other countries. So goods and services sold to international buyers, that is part of our GDP. And of course, imports are goods we purchase from others, so that has to be deducted. So that's the expenditure approach. So we have two approaches. One, this is the expenditure approach that we looked at: consumer spending, investment, government spending, and net exports in the product market. We can also say, we can look at the other side of it, is the income. How much did we make in wages? What did we get in rent, interest, and profit? So it's the same thing. So if you earn like $10,000 a month, or if you spend $10,000 a month, obviously you must have earned $10,000 a month. So we can calculate how much did you spend, that's the GDP approach, or the income approach, how much did you earn in terms of wages, rent, interest, and profit. So output equals income. So it's just looking at it at different ways and calculating it different ways. So national income is the other way. So depreciation charges reduce our GDP, obviously. So our net domestic product is GDP minus depreciation. So that's what we have available to us for consumption. So instead of looking at who's buying, we can look at who's being paid. That's the other side of the equation. Market incomes equals the output. That was the income equals the expenditures. So national income is the total income earned by the current factors of production. So this is all the income that's available to us within our borders, plus any income that we earned outside the country. If we have invested in China, Japan, and other countries, what amount of money are we bringing back in? That is available to us for consumption. That is the other approach, NDP plus the net foreign factor income. How much foreigners, we have to deduct what net foreign factor is. Basically, we have to take out the foreigners who have earned the money from our GDP, and then add from the foreign factor and add what we collected, and the net amount is what we add. So wages, interest, profits paid to foreigners are not part of our income, so we need to take that out. And income that we earned abroad is an inflow to the U.S. household, so that has to be added back. Again, so the national income approach is the other approach we can do. So personal income is income received by households before payment of personal taxes. So your national income minus the businesses that are paid in indirect business taxes, minus corporate profits, minus interest, minus social security taxes and transfer payments. Add the transfer payments that's available to us as personal income, and add the capital income. So that's how you calculate the personal income. Disposable income is after what we paid in taxes. You take your personal income minus the personal taxes. That's what's available to us for spending. So these are different ways of calculating making sure how we are progressing in the economy. Are the incomes going up? How much is our disposable income? So that's why we need to know how these work. So if we look at the expenditure approach and the income approach, it's the same thing. Consumer goods, we spent $10,000 on that. Investment was $19.94. Government spent $28.82. Our exports were $18.59. We imported more, $25.29. So our GDP output was $14.265 in billions of dollars. Okay. But on the flip side, we can say wages and salaries. We had 8 million in wages, 8 billion in wages, and corporate profits was 1,092. We can add the income, the rents, interest, depreciation, miscellaneous expenses, and any discrepancies, and we still either income equals output, basically. So the expenditure approach. So when we look at the flow of income, we take a gross domestic product minus the depreciation is what we have available to us for consumption, 12,433, because we have to set this money aside for future replacing. And to the net domestic product, we add what we earned abroad, net foreign factor income, bring that home. Of course, statistical discrepancies happen, so they have to adjust for that. And that gives us the national income. This is what we have as the nation available to us, out of which we have to take away business taxes because government has collected that. And we have to take away the profits that the corporations made, minus the interest payments and any social security taxes we have paid. And then we add to that our transfer payments, whatever we received in transfer payments from the government, and add the capital income, and that brings us to personal income. And out of this personal income, we take out the taxes, and that gives us the disposable income. So savings, again, out of the disposable income, we don't spend everything we have. We have disposable income, again, equals consumption plus savings. So if you made $1,000, you spent $800, and you save $200, so $800 consumption plus saving equals the amount you earned, the amount you have as disposable income. So it's either consumed or saved. So, but the way that we are doing is our savings are negative actually, and hence the problem. Our savings rate has been low for quite a few number of years, and now maybe people have started to save, but our savings rate is really low. We consume everything we have, plus more, by borrowing. So the flow of income. So the dollar value, like I said, the total income, whether it goes to households, businesses, it equals to the income. So it's a circular flow of income from the product to the factor market, whether consumers get it, government expenditures, or we can look at the factor market, which goes as wages. And so when you look at this, it's the way we look at it, and that's what it equals. Either way, it's a different way of calculating it. So this concludes this chapter. And remember that the GDP minus depreciation equals net domestic product, and net domestic product plus foreign factor income equals your national income. And after that, the other calculations are there. And again, GDP doesn't measure everything, because just because our GDP is growing, let us say crime has increased incredibly. Then what happens? We hire more police officers, right? And then we have to build more jails, correct? And so more people are employed, and more jails are being constructed. Construction people are happy. New jails are being built, and more lawyers are there, obviously. And then there are more police officers and more cars and everything. So our economy is growing. The GDP is growing. Great, you could say. But is it great? It does not tell you anything about the welfare about the country. Just because the GDP growth alone does not indicate that we are on the path, on the right path, because the GDP growth, we have to still look at the basically the new index that they're coming as the gross GPI, or the progress index. How are we doing in terms of education? How are we doing in terms of jails, the crime and all of that? So GDP growth doesn't mean, the GDP will grow. If we keep overeating and we get obese, more cardiologists have to be trained, and more doctors have to be there, and increases the demand for nurses. So it's all chain reaction, multiplier effect. But it does not mean just because we have more medicines now to treat obesity, more doctors, more hospitals, more beds, more equipment, and we eat irresponsibly, and our medical bills go up. So it does not mean the GDP will grow, but it does not indicate anything about the welfare of the country. And that is what we are on the trend, on that trend of obesity in this country, because if everybody thinks we are just one person, it doesn't matter, but every person does matter. Because if you decide to eat that hamburger, say, I don't care, I'm just only one, but that's one extra hamburger sold, one extra the extra profit that's being made, the extra money that they're investing in that business because the business is growing. And then there's one extra doctor trained, one extra bed in the hospital. So if the multiplier effect is huge, and each person thinks like that, so think of the multiplier effect. So the GDP will grow, but it does not indicate anything about progress. So every action that we take affects the entire macro economy, and we need to keep that in mind. So I'm going to conclude this, and if you have any homework questions, feel free to ask.